Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Jim Benson. We talked about the standard work of punk rock promotion, how there is always something that Jim can do, and how he feels still 25, although that's no longer the case. I'm Ivan Hult from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you like today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello Jim Benson. Welcome here, and here I'm going to show us a little bit on where are we, and here for me means oops, and it's been one of these days that we said today. I'm always in Belgium, in Ghent, Belgium, and let's move us thanks to Google Earth to where you are, and that is Seattle, all the way to almost the other part of the world, I would say.
Yeah, just up and to the left of where
Yeah, the
that little
goal was
thing
not to help stalkers to know the exact location. That's not the goal. Let's bring you back on screen here. Jim, for the well, and on my side, it's 20 before 10 o'clock in the evening. What's the time on your side?
It is 40 past noon.
40 past noon. So that shows us already a little bit the differences that we are, how we are, yeah, different time zones and different, yeah. This is how we roll these days, doing these from all over the world. And well, we kind of jumped a little bit into that, Jim. For the people that don't know you, how do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Jim Benson, creator of personal Kanban and lean coffee and things like that in the agile world,
Mhm.
and wrote the book Personal Kanban with Tony and Maria many years ago, which won a Shingo Award. Just came out with the book, The Collaboration Equation. I got
Mhm.
my start, like real start in anything as a angry punk rocker in Nebraska in the 1980s, 1970s and
Wow.
1980s. Then went off to become an urban planner and a civil engineer. Then had a software company. And now, for the last 15 or 20 years, have run around the world working with companies of all types to help people collaborate, get their work done, visualize, and de stress.
And de-stress, that's a nice way to put it. So yeah, and I'm trying to at this point I screwed up a little bit. I was trying to where is my mouse? Here it is. Talking about systems not always working. These are the some of the books that I think you've rewritten. You talked about the
Yes.
collaboration creation, personal
Yeah.
Kanban, and some of the other books that you've written.
They're all lined up there.
Oops. So let's bring you back. So yeah, and I think with personal Kanban, I would think you kind of shook the world a little bit. People were thinking like, oh, okay, we can actually do these things, the team thing also on personal level, and that kind of yeah made people think in all kind of directions. I think.
Yep.
And that was nice, but I also remember at that time that for you it was like, yeah, I've done that, but I also in my words, I think you said something like, I don't want to be a one trick pony and I want to do much more than just be the personal Kanban person.
Yep.
Is that a correct way to say?
That's correct. It might not have been the best thing for my pocketbook. I probably could have made a whole lot of money if I just kept pushing personal Kanban. But yeah, I want people to go home happy, even if we're working at home. Like when I
Mm.
leave this room and go off into the rest of the house, I want to end my day pleased with my work, feeling like I had good relationships with the people I was working with, and that we understood what we were doing and why. Personal Kanban is a major part of that, but it is only a part of that larger
Mm.
dynamic.
Yeah, and I think I also like the idea as a coach and as a person who, yeah, I like to have multiple things in my toolbox, and I think that's also a little bit like you in that time frame when we talked. I said, yeah, but that's just one of the different things that I can do.
Mhm.
I can do much more.
Like you say, indeed, maybe your accountant and other people around you might say, well, there is more money, but yeah, there is more to life than just the money part. If you don't feel happy about always teaching the same thing for more than 10 years, yeah, that wouldn't have helped you as a person
Hmm.
as well, I would say. So we kind of jumped into that on who is Jim and some other things. So let's start with that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you but has influenced you in who you are?
Well, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this lately.
Hmm.
So when I was an angry punk rocker at 14 through 18 or 19 years old in the middle of Nebraska, it was because, frankly, it was the thing I could do to express the rage that I was feeling anyway, for being kind of a not straight kid growing up in the middle of a place that was incredibly intolerant of anything. Uh,
Hmm.
and so, as a kid, the first thing we did is we went and learned to play guitars, and then we learned how to sell the music, and then we learned how to build a following, and then we learned how to do distribution and record pressing. And so all of that stuff led to me understanding supply chains and marketing and business. And it was really just me saying, I'm really sick of not being able to be honest about who I am. And that's made me think an awful lot about, like, what is it that influences people in general,
Hmm.
to, like, what is it that inspires us to action? That could have been actually inciting me to action, but it did also inspire action, but it wasn't direct action. And so growing up in that experience has really influenced me, partially because of the systems thing, but that's like just me intellectualizing it, right? It's also when I'm working with clients and some client notes that something hurts them,
Hmm.
I take that seriously and I introduce it back into the system. What in the system is hurting you? How can we make that pain go away? How can we respect the fact that it was painful? And then how can we,
Hmm.
build systems in the future that make that never happen to anybody else?
Wow. So that's, yeah, it's at multiple level. I'm trying to also think, if you think back about, well, being a punk rocker and then moving it to business.
Yep.
Punk rocker and business, that sometimes is a little bit, yeah, people say, yeah, you might sell out and everything. How does that, but for you, what I'm hearing is it was just a means to, okay, expressing and finding yourself. So in that sense, I don't hear that there was any tension for you, or am I now jumping to conclusions?
Any tension about selling out, or
Well, selling and the marketing part about business, from
oh, so there's one day where I was sitting in my house in Grand Island, Nebraska, and my friend Dave Fisher drives up and in his car, and he gets out and he runs into my house. He doesn't knock on the door or anything. He runs into the house, looks around at my parents. They say he's upstairs. He runs upstairs and he lays out all of these different posters that he's created for an upcoming concert that we're going to have.
Mm,
And next to the posters, Dave has all of these posters that he had found and cut out from like Maximum Rock and Roll and other magazines that they were using in London. And then he was going through step by step, basically the standard work of punk rock concert promotion. And
so
the
the
first
part.
person was just like, screw it, I'm just going to staple these things onto a piece of paper and photocopy them. But they became standard work in a specific type of marketing, and that memory of him coming in and being like wild-eyed and excited because he'd figured out marketing was like a thing, because for us it was part of the punk rock experience, We weren't necessarily like, how do we extract money from people? We're like, how do we get people to show up at this warehouse outside of Kearney, Nebraska, and see a bunch of screaming teenagers? So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but it certainly was
Yeah,
a
but
fun story to tell.
yeah, I really love it, because indeed it's like you say, it's a kind of, yeah, it's, people think, oh, it's special, it's punk rock, but at the same time there is some kind of unofficial marketing or kind of team. Everybody does kind of the same thing, and
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of interesting, because especially at that age, 14, 18, you want to be special, you want to be completely different, and one way or another we're all the same in
Yep.
that specific
Yeah. You
market.
want to not conform within the boundaries of acceptable conformity.
Exactly. That's a nice way of putting that. But this is indeed a very nice story, which I think is good to for people to understand that, okay, one way or another you're moving, and you want to grow your audience, and it's not per se bad if you want to grow an audience, and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's really good to think about it, and also for the young people, like, okay, that was also part of what we did. Now you're doing it differently with your books and other kind of ways. And at the same time, like you say,
Yep.
I don't want to just be one product. Probably like a band doesn't want to be all around one album. You want to create more albums, and you want to create
Mm-hmm.
more songs and everything.
Yep.
And so you want to evolve and move on. So that's
And
really
it's okay to be influenced by other musicians, but if
mm,
you just play other people's music, then you're a cover band. And
mm,
there is no specific interestingness about you. It's just like yes, you can sound a whole lot like, the Police or whatever. But we did have a song that was actually called No Covers, where we said, railed against people who recorded other people's music. And so now what we find, like on Modus Institute, in our online school, we have a class called Finding Solutions, and it's a problem solving class for complex environments. And the thing about that's relevant is that we have a lot of standard work in there about how to solve complex problems, but you can never solve two complex problems the same way.
mm.
So there has to be a format so people don't freak out and say, oh my God, what are we going to do? But that format has to be flexible enough to bend to the demands of the
Like
problem at
problem.
hand. Yeah.
It's interesting. And yeah, and in a similar way to songs, there is a format, like you have a number of notes that's limited.
Mm-hmm.
You have a number of instruments that you're using, and of course you can use extra instruments. You can use all kind of tonations on your guitar and on all kind of things. But
Yep.
in the end, it's a song that has
Yep.
some kind of rhythm, and that has probably some kind of structure one way or another. So
Yep.
there is a lot of things there. And I would say also, the more you get into a certain, I don't know, kind of music, you recognize, oh, these are the kind of music that genre is recognizable by this kind of thematic songs, whatever. Even if the songs are all new, you kind of recognize the theme of the music, I would say. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot there that is similar, that I can see. I can definitely see how it influenced you also in a lot of other things on how you work. So thanks for sharing that.
You bet.
If I want to go to that next song, that if you had not been doing what you've been doing now, is there anything that would have become of you? Is that punk rocker, was that something that you were hoping to do for the rest of your life, or was that just like, okay, I just want to, I don't know, use my time?
Well, after high school, I moved to Denver, Colorado to become a professional punk rocker.
Mm,
And
professional
one,
punk rocker. That
yes.
it sounds contradictory, but at the same time, I understand it.
Money is the thing. Well, let's just say full time.
Mm,
And one night I was leaving a club in Denver, and a bunch of people, and I was like, wow, if I stay in this, I'm probably not going to make a lot of money or become famous, but I probably at one point or another will end up becoming a heroin addict like these people.
Wow.
And so I'm like, maybe that's not what I want to do. So then I went off to do the urban planning thing, which I did for over a decade and was a wonderful, wonderful career. But what I liked is that the question initially posed was if you worked in IT, and that you changed it to if you weren't doing what you do, because not even I can define what I'm doing. But if I could pick anything that I would could have done, it would probably be to go back and teach these lessons that I teach even more obscurely by writing fiction.
Wow.
And I find uh, that in life you run into certain people who are able to express themselves in certain ways in whatever medium they're in. So there is no Paul Simon song that won't make, or no Paul Simon album that won't make me cheer up. Yes, that's right. Punk rocker loves Paul Simon. There you go. That's pretty much me in a nutshell. And there's no part of a Vonnegut book that isn't going to impact me, or Haruki Murakami, or in a minute you're going to ask me a question about book I want to recommend, and that the woman that wrote that book, she floors me with the stuff that she does. I that's the thing that I always want to do. I feel like the world is filled with division and angst at the moment. It wasn't that way before 2016, but it sure is now. And I would like to find some way to provide a voice to some messages that can get out there, calm people down, bring people back together, and kind of get us back on the right track as human beings, which might be it's a lot more complicated than opening a bakery, I'm afraid.
But in a sense, it goes back to the original answer to the answer to the first question. Punk rock is also about changing the world in for a lot of people with a certain worldview, thinking, okay, this is, we're angry about the current version of the world and we want to change it. I hear a less angry person, but I would say a person that still is as concerned probably as the 40-year-old Jim. Is that a correct way of stating that?
Yeah. um uh Making sure my reference, no, not that. Crap, I can't find it. I can't remember who recorded it, but there was a punk rock song in the 80s where the lyrics were literally just, we just want to have some fun, we just want to have some fun, we just want to have some fun while we're young enough to get away with it. and and those obviously they're catchy lyrics, but that's always stuck in my head because it's, the world is experiencing this right now. It's very easy for anger to consume you if you don't convert it into something else.
Right.
So if you don't convert it into something like, joining a punk band or whatever, then it will literally just sit there and consume you. It is energy, and you either can jujitsu it by grabbing it and reflecting it somewhere else, or you can have some fun, or you can drown in that pain. And that isn't to belittle any of the pain. It's just to say that the pain itself needs to either be acted on, or it'll eat you up. We see that in business all the time, where
I was
there's
about to say that's it's not just in punk rock. It's definitely, yeah, in a lot of people there that either the complaining inside companies, and actually what you earlier talked about, everything that's happening since 2016. There is a lot of anger with people, but anger that is, yeah, that is not getting out or used in a positive way. I would say it's more used to, yeah, to fight each other or to fight people that we think are different. But that is, yeah, it's not helping the world in that sense, I would say.
It's eating us alive right now.
Mm. And you, when you say us, you mean specifically United States, or you mean broader than that?
Humanity. I
Humanity.
mean, the United States is really good at broadcasting it, but you don't have to go any farther than Ukraine or Angola to see other people hurting each other
Mm.
physically in a way that we haven't. Yeah, we shoot all of our kids in schools and give them lots and lots of drugs and stuff, but we're much sneakier in our murder. And culpable deniability is kind of the religion of the United States, I think.
That's
That might be my super inflammatory comment for this particular interview.
yeah, but I at the same time I recognize the worry, and I think many people are these days. I'm working with the Ukrainian team, or with a big part of the team is from Ukrainian,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I've just, yeah, it their life is really in shambles in all kind of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and people actually come to work to kind of forget the trouble that they're in.
Yep.
There's all kind of other kind of thing. Of course, you need to work as well at some point. But literally, I had a colleague whose house, or the house next to his house, was shut down, and he
Mm-hmm.
came to work because he didn't want to look at it. And that's yeah, that's the kind of thing that people are having at that moment, I would
Yeah.
say. And
Yeah, we were working with a team where half the people were in Belarus and half the people were in Ukraine, and they woke up one morning and they were at war with each other.
wow.
Like a team that literally met every week for picnics and stuff. And needless to say, they didn't go physically to war with each other, but yeah, it was
It was tense, I can imagine.
um, the world is nothing but perspective, and you wish it wasn't.
I can definitely see that. That's wow. Yeah, yeah, I thought about my team, but this is even the next level, I would say.
It's this is the this is a very typical conversation for you and me. I don't know if this is a typical conversation about agile.
No, but well, for us, I think it's important with the Who's Agile. It's important to show the people and to show also a little bit on where we are and what we're thinking about.
We're definitely
So
where we are.
this is indeed where we are. So let's go to that third question. What is at this point your biggest challenge, at least the one that you want to share open on the internet? And also,
Wow. So there's two of them. One's super businessy and the other one isn't. So I'm going to do the one that isn't, because it's
mm,
kind of the direction of the call. So a couple of months ago, actually a month ago, my wife and I got on a plane and we went to the UK, and we stayed there for 3 weeks to figure out if we wanted to move to England.
wow.
Because the guns and the fentanyl and the all of the other social ills of the United States are seriously catching up with the country. And
Mm,
if this country doesn't start solving anything at all, it's in for a world of hurt. And I've worked for the military. I've worked for all government agencies, like tons of government agencies, from local to state to county to federal to whatever. And leaving doesn't sound like something that I would necessarily want to do,
mm,
but my wife doesn't feel safe here.
wow.
So we're going to go back at the end of the year, and we're going to see if we want to move. And that for me is a huge challenge, just because one, 58 years old, you don't particularly want to immigrate. But number two, there's kind of like this meta thing going on where there's a system here and the system is broken, and I personally I can't find my role in fixing the system. So
Wow.
from 19 90 to 2000. So for a decade, I was I was a co-chair or a chair, basically ran a huge section of the Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt. So I was an AIDS activist for a very long time. And I could find my role even in a situation like that. And I can't find my role in this. And I've been working increasingly with companies where there are people on teams and they can't find their role.
Wow.
And it's been it's the thing that makes me sit and look at oceans a lot. You know, the long pondering about finding your place, understanding where you're going, and how that fits into agile. So, you know, agile first
Mm.
starts off and we're like, we're going to kill off all the roles, everything's going to be cross-functional teams, and oh, by the way, we need a scrum master. Oh, and it would be help to have a product owner too, and oh, it would help to have this and this and this. Teams should work entirely alone. Oh wait, they don't have to, so we're going to have scrums of scrums. That as we get more people involved with things, there needs to be a structure, and that structure doesn't have to be malevolent, but it needs to be defined so that we know our place and what we can do and what we need to ask others before we do. And it's super important no matter what it is, if it's like a whole country or if it's just a team of 5 people. You know, knowing what your social expectations are huge. I'm
And
sorry, this is like we've gone really
no,
deep.
no, yeah, yeah. Sometimes the discussion have the tendency to go very quick, very deep, and yeah, we shared, or I showed the number of books that you've written. So you thought you I know you also, and the books kind of show that as a person who thinks really deep and hard about how to improve things, and you have multiple parts of that you focused on. If it's the personal Kanban, if it's the about the plans, that if you're thinking about beyond agile and everything, the whole collaboration now, it's I can imagine that it with all that experience, it also must sometimes be frustrating, because you do have so much knowledge, you do have so much things on where you can help, and then we're stuck in a world where it's kind of hard for you to find that place.
Mm-hmm.
That's and what I also heard is that well, there's two parts of it, because there's the part that, okay, you have that hard time finding your place, and at the same time it's also about how do I support my partner, because like you said earlier on, it's you she doesn't feel safe anymore in your
Yep.
country.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just finding your role, but it's also what how could I, or how could we change our lives so that it's much safer for her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I I in the collaboration equation itself is individuals work in teams to create value. We never work alone, but we talk a lot about my work or your
Mm,
work or accountability. And what we don't talk a lot about is how are we as a group of people going to make sure that this thing gets done in the best way possible. And so in the household, Vivian is part of my team. And so what is good for me is good for her, for Modus, and for my life in general. What's good for Tony Ann is good for me. What's good for my brother, what's good for Thushanthan, everybody that's involved in Modus. That if we don't watch out for each other, we're all gonna falter.
mm. And that's, yeah, I really like how you bring that, because it's both the individual and as a team, like you say, we in a way, it's holding each other accountable, and it's working on each other's strengths, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and helping each other and taking care of each other in that way. But also when we don't, or when we see, oh, wait a minute, this might be a problem, you might not see it, but it might become a problem for you. the people around you are yeah, holding you accountable, or showing you a mirror, like, oh, wait a minute, Jim, or anyone else, this might become a problem, something like that.
Yeah. So when you're in a committed relationship with one person, it is pretty accepted that at some point you and that person need to talk about what your expectations are of each other. But we
Mm,
never do that with our teams at work, ever. But your team at work is nothing more than a large marriage that you didn't pick.
wow, that's a deep thought. Yeah, it's, well, it's a little bit like we say, we choose a work and we leave a boss, and in that sense is that at some point we realize, oh, wait a minute, this agreement doesn't work, or the way you treat me as a person doesn't work, and we leave.
Hmm.
But like you say, it's actually should have been much better to come to some kind of agreement of how do we treat each other, what can I expect of you, what can, a little bit like I would say also in a coaching relationship. In the beginning of a coaching relationship, you create some kind of contract on, okay, how could I help you? What do you expect from me? What can you expect from me? Things like
Hmm.
that. And what you're saying is that we don't do that enough at work for all kind of things. So
So we do this with something that's called a right environment exercise,
mm,
and just to give some idea of scale, we've done this, at Modus where we have just a few people, and I've done this on large scale construction projects in New York that have literally hundreds of people on the team. And the team gets
wow,
together, they figure out what they do every day, they figure out how they're going to solve problems, they figure out how they're going to share information with each other, they figure out how they're going to visualize their work, because I'm Jim Benson, you got to visualize your work in there somewhere. But what we do is we build a room called an Obeya, which is where all of their Kanbans and other visualizations are. Yes, Kanban is never enough. If you're managing a project and you only have a Kanban, you're faking it.
mm,
There are other things that are dying to be visualized. But when people have those things, then again, it lets them know what we say is act with confidence. It lets them know when they can act and how they can act, where their help will be appropriate. And that there's ample opportunities to help, that it's not just like, in the event of this, then thou shalt help. It's like every day all sorts of things are happening and people want to help each other, but they don't know how. And so when they don't know how, they don't help, and then that destroys your confidence. You don't know when to act, you don't know how to act, and it also destroys your job satisfaction. So
wow,
being able to help is agency. That's all agency really is. Psychological safety is just being able to help and knowing when you can help without getting punched in the face for it. And if you
yeah,
can set
exactly,
those
that's what I
things
was
up at the beginning and say, here's our social contract of how we're going to work together, life just flows. And I don't know, I love doing those things.
Yeah, but I really like that you put that part in there, because that's, yeah, I think there's a few people thinking and talking about how we need to do that, and I think if we don't do all that kind of work, yeah, the real question is that really a team, or is that more a group of people that we kind of threw together and then we tell them
Hmm.
you're a team? But it's, if you don't do that kind of work, you're not really a team, I would say. Or you're maybe accidentally a team, but
Yeah,
nothing. Yeah, we need
yeah.
to actually work on these kind of things, and yeah, that makes a huge difference, I would say.
And I would say that out of all of the software development teams out there, maybe 8 to 10% of them have ever had these conversations at all.
I
And that's
agree. I
probably
agree.
being very liberal on that number.
Indeed, that I think that um, I have something strange somehow. My You just died on my screen. So
Oh
okay,
no,
but it, yeah. Let me see if I can
I
bring
see
that.
you.
Yeah, I think I know. It's interesting where what's happening here. Um, I know I'm still there. That's the good thing, but I'm just not sure why that. screen has stopped working somehow.
So you
Um,
are not seeing me, but probably we're still recording on the cloud.
yeah, we're still recording, and I see that I fixed it. Okay, clicking multiple times, I fixed it. Okay, sorry. I don't know if I'll click if I edit it out or I'd keep it, because also that's part of how we roll these days. We use some kind of tools and it's working fine. And before the talk, for the people to know, we talked about it's some kind of day where some of the tools are not working our way, and yeah, it seems to be continue going on. But I want to move to that second part, because
Okay.
what that second part, that next question is that, and you kind of moved into that direction with the answer, with your last part of the answer. You said, I'm really like, yeah, okay, this is what I like to do. So you, I know you as a very driven, a very passionate person. Even the fact that you say, I look at the sea, I can't figure it out. There is also
Mhm.
some kind of passion because you want to change that world. Do you know, or can you share where do you think that passion or that drive is coming from?
Um. Yeah. uh, so I I remember. I'm going to go back to Paul Simon again. So as a like 1972 maybe, lying on the floor as a 7-year-old kid, listening to my dad's hi-fi, listening to the sounds of silence. And I'm reasonably sure at that point that was just kind of like the that Paul Simon was like, you're destined to have to carry this weight on your shoulders. Between Paul Simon, then later with Kurt Vonnegut and with others, there is this feeling that that people are suffering. They might include you. It
Mm.
includes all of us from time to time. Paul Simon said the future is beauty and sorrow. But that you can help and you can't.
Wow.
And coming to terms with that dichotomy, that there's always something that you can do, and that entropy is always there, that things will always decay. Jim Benson will go from being 7 years old to 58 years old. He will feel like he's still 25. But that doesn't change the fact that he's not. And so there the our role, my role as a human being, is completely wasted if I have not tried to find practical ways to help other people get through the things in life.
Wow.
And that I'll really condense this story. Um, my mother was Catholic, so I went to a Catholic church as a kid. It was a happy hippie guitar based Catholic church, post Vatican II kind of thing, but it was still a Catholic church. And when it came time for confirmation, I spent most of the confirmation classes, like I read the whole Bible in like the first week and basically memorized it and was done. And then I went to my priest, Father Chuck, who was a Jesuit, and he had books. So I sat around with him and I read like the Upanishads and I read the Torah and I read all these other religions. And then in the end, he and I sat down and he's like, "You're not going to get confirmed, are you?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "You don't believe this stuff, do you?" And I was like, "What I think is that if Jesus existed, he wouldn't care one way or the other if I believed in him.
Mm.
I think that God wouldn't care one way or the other if I believed in him. But what I think is that all of these books say basically the same thing, which is we have a duty on this earth to leave it in a better space than when we got there. And
Yeah,
if we don't, then our life is meaningless. And so that is what drives me.
but I really like it because yeah, I have not a complete similar upbringing, but at the same time, and in my father's family, there were a lot of priests, so there's a lot of Catholic, yeah,
Yep.
and
You are pretty
that
monk shaped, you know.
but yeah, I recognize the part that a lot of religious they share the same ideas about leaving a better world, doing something, and they all have their own kind of tendencies, a little bit like we have in the agile world. Also, there is also religious about this song is better than that, and but the whole idea is also to make the world of developers, when it was originally created, a better place, and we all do it in a different way with the same idea of like what was written then in the agile manifesto as something uniform.
Mhm.
And there is a lot of things there the same at the same time, unfortunately, one way or another, just like in agile as in religious, somehow that then turns into some kind of religion of this is how you have to behave, and then it kind of loses the meaning behind, which is what you
Yep.
were just talking about.
There's so many people who will say, I've been doing personal Kanban for 5 years, and my board looks like this, and I'm like, how long has your board looked like that? And they're like, 5 years. I'm like, could you please set fire to your board? They've created their own dogma around how a personal Kanban is created. And like, I have a board right over here right now that says epic stuff doing crap I did. It's things I need to talk about. It's because like right now, that's the format that I needed. The work drives the format. The people that
And
you're helping drive the actions that you take. The things that people can't change, those constraints drive the system of coping that you can build with them. So
yeah,
here,
and at some point that might be okay to not change it, but there will always be a moment that you say, okay, now I can't work in this system, in this dogma anymore, and I need to change anything. And that could be the board, that could be the way of working, that could be the structure of the company, or anything.
well, yeah, or you figure out what it is, and you also get reasonable expectations about the rate of change that you can achieve. So why does Agile fail? Agile fails because it comes in and says, we're going to do this. And whatever the this is, it's radically different than what's being done now. And there simply isn't the social, the procedural, the legal, the functional, the theoretical, the philosophical, the emotional systems in place to put in
it,
that new system.
it, it It's interesting because when you were saying that, the phrase, and I think it's coming from Paul Simon, that comes to me is people hearing without listening, and
Yes.
yeah, they think they understand it. Like when you talk about personal Kanban, they think they understand, but actually they haven't listened to what you're saying is in a way.
Yep.
Yeah, there is still a lot there, I would say.
Yep, yep. The words of the prophets are written on the subway walls. Yeah, you can find religion anywhere you look.
Yeah, and I think if you look at how people look at musicians at some point, independent of genres, there is always people that look them up and put them as gods,
Yep.
and then are very surprised if they are human and they can become ill, or that they do strange things, or horrible things, or that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
cancel their tours because they're ill, or because they think their own health is more important than the concert or whatever. That's yeah. That's I think this is also important to see that it's not just it's actually the religion part is the dangerous part, I would say.
We 1991 Moore Theater, Seattle, Washington. Erica, the woman I was seeing at the time, and I went to see Suzanne Vega, and
Mhm.
she was really sick. Suzanne was really sick, and she's up there and she's performing, and she keeps having to stop and drink and take a break and stuff. And finally, at one point, the audience told her to go home. And they said, "We love you. We will come to your concerts. We're not upset. We just want you to be okay. Go rest." And it was painful to watch. And so it happens the other way too, where if you are, and I know that you and I have both been in this situation where we have clients or we have a talk that we're giving or something, and people have paid for it. We will crush ourselves to deliver that service,
Mm.
even when it's not good for us, and perhaps even not good for the people that we're going to help. And so, uh, being able at some point to understand again what your place is in that relationship, and to say, like, I'll give you your money back, or I will do this, or I will do that, but protecting both sides of that relationship, super important and super hard to do.
Yeah, when you say it, it almost brings tears to me because I recognize so much. It's indeed the promise that you make to people. For me, is really important. But I've learned, well, that there are moments that, that promise that there are other things in life that are more important than. And I've never seen, well, the story that you say about Susan Vega. I've never seen that, but I've actually have some musicians friends that I saw that were really ill, that they're like, okay, they took whatever legal drugs they had to go on stage,
Mm-hmm.
and they performed, and nobody knew, from except for the friends that were there, that they were ill, and they perform really well, and then they come off stage and they basically collapse, and then they go to bed, and then they stay there for a few days. And it's at first I thought, wow, this is wonderful, and the more I think about it later on, it's like, no, they should have found ways to say, well, sorry,
Yeah,
this is not healthy, and find other kind of ways to do that. And of
that
course,
happened to me in Rotterdam. I was keynoting one of the conferences. You were probably there. And I was real. I couldn't breathe. I was wheezing. I just felt like crap. But then the moment you get on stage and the adrenaline kicks in, you just go. You're an entirely different human being. And you
yeah,
don't realize at the time, you're like, wow, I feel really good. But you don't realize while you're doing it that you are borrowing that energy from your future.
exactly.
And that when you leave, you're right, you just face plant, and then other people have to carry you to your room.
Yeah, I've seen many different kind of things, and it's. I think it's also important that we talk about it. I think, well, this is the part of the world I like a little more. The last year, I feel that more musicians, more sportsmen, and ever they start talking about it, so that we realize it. But
Yeah.
I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I
Simone
think
Biles really helped with that when she
that's the
stepped.
idea I talked about it, that I thought about the sports person, so
Yeah,
to do that.
yeah.
And in
When she
tennis,
stepped
we
out of
see
the
it in,
Olympics, it gave a lot of people permission to care for themselves.
yeah, and that's it's yeah. Some people thought, oh, that yeah, you're top. That you should never do it. No, it's the exact moment you should do it and show the world, like, okay, there is too much pressure at some point, or there is other things going on in your life. We don't even need to know what's happening, but
Yep.
if for these people it's like this is not happening. We have musicians in Belgium that did the same thing, and I think it's really important that we at some point say, well, sorry, but this is not healthy. And that is also part of, well, we talk about drive, we talk about changing the world. It's also setting that example and realizing it. And
Hmm.
sometimes we need people around us that tell us, like, well, wait a minute, maybe today should be a moment that you need to say no, and you need to say, take care of yourself. Because
Yep.
I know that for me, I've learned to recognize it. I've learned from some of the mistakes I've done in the past, so I hope I'm better at it. But I'm still know that my partner or other people around me are really good at saying, if wait a minute, you're going to say this or that, or you're going to go for promise another
Hmm.
thing. or you really want to make sure that you want to do that. That's,
Still, yeah. It's no matter how hard we try, we are still human.
yeah, exactly. That's it's both the good and the bad parts, I would say.
Yep.
Well, I want to move to kind of the same and kind of the opposite question. Like, okay, what is your biggest achievement? What is the thing? And the question that is below that I think is that I start to ask more and even more interested is that this is basically your permission to brag. Is it easy for you, Jim Benson, to brag and to say, "Hey, I'm really proud of this or that"?
Well, so I'm proud of many things. I'm proud of the personal Kanban book. I'm proud of the Shingo Award. I'm really proud of the collaboration equation book. Um, I'm proud of the album I just released, and I'm really, really, really proud of my char siu. I make the best Chinese barbecue pork you will find anywhere. But the biggest achievement for me is going to seem just like a thing. And that's that. I was a little kid growing up in Nebraska, right? And so when I was a little kid growing up in Nebraska, I would lie out in this huge field behind my house because we have those things in Nebraska, and and because that's all that's there is it's just us and mosquitoes and crickets. But it's what in America is called a flyover state. All the planes flying back and forth between the East Coast and the West Coast fly over Nebraska, and I would lie there as a kid and stare up at the sky, and I was like, someday I'm going to go someplace. Those people are going
Mm.
someplace. Everyone in this town just literally sits here and complains about stuff.
Wow.
And so I leave, go to Denver, become a punk rocker, and then I go off to Michigan to go to college. And while I'm in university in Michigan, I get an opportunity to go to study in Japan. There is no underestimating the amount of importance that has when you're a kid who's literally never gone anywhere. So you pick
From
yourself up.
Nebraska to Japan.
Yeah. Well, at that point from Michigan to Japan, but Michigan's
Yeah,
like
I know, but
Nebraska,
from the kid
more
from
people.
Nebraska, that's
Yeah.
what I want to
Yeah.
say.
And so I went to study there. I had never really had sushi before. I was a guest of several government agencies while I was there. Taito Rapid Transit Authority, Japan Rail, Tokyo Metropolitan Government, and more. And every day, literally every day. So imagine this, like kid that has literally could swear that burgers and canned food is all that people eat. Every day they would bring out these 48 section bento boxes filled with the best sashimi on earth. And the one thing that I was told before I went from my friend Akio is when you're there, when someone puts food in front of you, you have to eat it. You can't make a face and you can't look scared of it. You have to eat the food. And so I did.
Mm.
And everything about that trip was transformative. Even drinking a beer was transformative. And
Because it
so
tasted completely different, because it feels completely different. Is that how I should say?
everything was functionally, structurally, olfactorily. Everything smelled different, looked different, tasted different, moved differently. It was really weird being the tallest person in an entire country. uh,
Also, yeah, of course.
um,
You're not small for an American, but I can definitely see in Japan that would be, yeah.
there are parts of the subway where I had to walk like this because the ceiling was literally 6 feet high.
Wow.
Or less. And that not only proved to my dad, who needed some serious proving that I wasn't just a total fuck up, but it proved to me that I wasn't.
Mm.
And when you for all I talk up being a punk rocker and stuff like that, I grew up with an incredibly bad self-image because every day people were saying, I hate fags around me every single day. That any type of not straightness, every single day was a joke. Every single day was
Wow.
a threat. And so you grow up not thinking very highly of yourself. And that achievement, which I think was an achievement, totally funded by myself, totally everything by myself, was a thing that I think that most people need. You need that moment where you can surprise yourself. My
Yeah,
ego tells me that I'm perfectly capable of writing a good book, so I'm proud of those achievements. But this achievement was a surprising one for me, where it's like, I can't believe you did that.
yeah, moving. What is it? That's 10,000 kilometers or miles or
Yep.
whatever. So yeah, it's almost the opposite of the world, I would say. Not to
Yep.
say I know the exact what is the opposite from where you are in Nebraska, but it feels kind of the opposite.
Yep.
That's definitely. And
I
yeah,
think the
and
opposite
how
of
long?
Nebraska is heaven, actually. But
Okay, that's a different kind of direction, I would say. Uh, and how long did you stay there in Japan?
I was there for 3 months.
Wow.
And
And so
oh my God. Yeah, there's so many micro stories from there. But yeah, it yeah,
and
when
what age were you when you did that?
I was 23.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
23.
I can yeah, that these are the ages that still makes a lot of impact, huh?
Yeah,
Um,
plenty of neuroplasticity then.
yeah, I mean, this is the age that at one point you think I can deal with the world and I can do everything, and then you move to another country and you don't even know. I would say to walk around because you can't read the maps because everything is
Yep.
different, everything tastes different.
Yeah.
You're yeah, like you
Yeah,
said,
it
you
would have
feel
been
all
one thing if I would have went to like Sheffield or Toronto. But no, I went to Tokyo, and I am forever grateful to everyone that helped make that happen. Yeah.
I can imagine. I can imagine that that's a thing. I want to move to that next question, and that's well for you or for me, an interesting one to ask you. What is a personal agility tip to share?
Okay. This is the thing. It does involve it does involve visualizing your work, but this is the thing. So we talk a lot about agile in like that it means iterations and story points and stuff, but what agile should really mean is awareness. And the collaboration equation is individuals in teams create value. The individual part is very important. Being self-aware is incredibly important, and I fail at this all the time. But I will work for 2 or 3 days in an increasingly agitated state. I will get angrier and snippier with people as work becomes less clear, as there's too much work, I'm being interrupted too much, whatever might be going on. I'm not paying attention to the thing I want to pay attention to, which is really common when you've got a lot of clients. Um, so a tactical personal Kanban is the thing that always gets me out of this. I'm always shocked that I've gotten myself in that situation again. I always laugh at myself because of it. But what I will do, and that's what's up right over here right now, is I will very quickly write out an incredibly messy Kanban with a bunch of swim lanes. I'll drop the epics or the projects or the areas that are distracting me into different swim lanes. I'll fill those up with the stuff that needs to be done. And almost instantly, I calm down. And when I calm
Mhm.
down, everyone else benefits.
Because you don't create any chaos anymore, or you bring calmness, or how should I see it?
I'm not an escalator for other people's frustration.
Mm.
So what happens is if you're frustrated, someone else gets frustrated, and then you escalate. The Kanban right now, when I go over and look at it, I've still got a lot of work to do. But I also see a couple things. One is I see what I've finished, and you would be surprised when you write things down how quickly you will focus and finish things. That's personal Kanban 101 right there. But then the second thing is now I see the other things just as a finite set of objects. But if they're not visualized, in your head, they feel like an infinite set of objects. So work actually does not expand like a gas to take up the space available. Your fear of work does. Work is
Wow.
usually a
Yes.
lot smaller than that.
Yeah. I so like that, because it's indeed it's if you talk about people with all kind of, if it's a disability or all kind of things, is we're so much in fear for something, if it's whatever, and the fear is almost, yeah, it
Fear
blocks us
is
from
whip.
starting. Fear is whip, indeed,
Fear is
and
whip.
but
It's the
it's
worst kind of
waste at
whip.
the same. Exactly, it's the kind of thing that you want to definitely reduce.
Yeah, fear is the bad potatoes of the diet of work. It's just empty calories. And it will fill you up, but it won't help you get anything done.
Is it? Did you? This brings the vision to me. It might be interesting to experiment, and maybe you did, to create a column for the fear. What are the things we're fearful about? Because just having these things there, visualize it, maybe can help to not be fearful about it. Just to okay, what are we worried about, or what is it? Did you ever experiment with that
I
kind of thing?
have I have experimented with that, like taking it on directly.
Hmm.
And it was in situations where there was just literally just interpersonal conflict to deal with. Um, the thing about it is that fear fear is kind of a wrapper. It is metadata around some sort of central piece of work, or something that has to happen, or something that should happen, but for one reason or another, you don't feel that it can. An unsolved problem, we'll call it. And
Right.
so the larger the fear, we'll just think of it in data terms, the more metadata, the more garbage metadata it generates. And so
Right.
it's taking up more and more capacity on our internal storage systems, because we've taken this one little problem and we've wrapped it in a bunch of fears. So the best way of like describing this functionally is, let's say you've got a team, the team has a deadline, you've got a VP that's really interested in this deadline, a problem comes up, some complexity in the code, and no one will deal with that complexity because they are afraid of having to confront that VP. And so maybe they do some cancerous acts. So instead of like actually writing the code that should be written, they write some crazy code to try and work our way around the problem, which doesn't
Hmm.
make the problem go away. It just makes the system kind of hobble. And then we release, and then it explodes because that code was never the code that should have been written to begin with. And then the VP
Yeah.
gets angry anyway, and blah, 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 blah. So all this action happens. Maybe they have 25 meetings that say, we can't talk about this, but we can do these other things. All of that extra work is part of that wrapper, that fear wrapper, that fear induced whip, rather than just saying, you know what? We have a piece of complexity in the code. That's why we're paid to be here. The
Yeah.
project isn't going to get done until Wednesday. Bite me. and
Yeah.
and yeah,
It's I so recognize it, and also, well, on personal work and everything. If you, yeah, if there is a problem with a person, if it's either with one of my children or with my partner or with anyone else that is close by, if I try to neglect it, then it will get worse. And yeah, I think it's Jim McCarthy that says is that yeah, you can't what was it? Yeah, you can't ignore a conflict, or it will just, yeah, it won't go away. It will
Hmm.
become worse actually.
Yep.
And so yeah, trying to hide it and think that it will disappear is just it will actually get worse, and it's much better to take it on very while it's still small, I would say. And what you're
Hmm.
saying is that with all kind of work at work, things become bigger, and we do all kind of meetings to avoid to talk about the problem that's at hand, that we maybe have a toxic boss, or we have work that we can't finish and we're afraid to say it, and
Hmm.
then we do all kind of work to avoid to do the work actually.
Ah.
That's so deep. uh,
Well, and
Thanks,
what's
thanks
fun,
for sharing that.
yeah. Well, I mean, what's fun about the work that Tony Ann and I do is we can go in and we can actually help people solve problems like this. They were not going in and saying, here's your Band-Aid solution. We're going, let's take the really crazy problem and let's solve it. And yeah, it's
And
the harder
usually,
the
like,
problem, the better.
yeah, and like you say, you start by visualizing it. And maybe I want to zoom in a little bit on what you said. Yeah, you started out by saying I'm really bad at it, or I get, yeah, anxious, and there's all kind of things. But probably because you are that way, you see it so well in organizations and other kind of things. Because yeah, it's we usually are the best to recognize the problems, the ones that we're still struggling from time to time ourselves with. At least that works for me. When I feel anxious, I
Hmm.
just need to recognize that, oh, wait a minute, that gut feeling, it tells me something about that situation, and I
Yep.
need to listen to that.
So I got very close to having a degree in psychology. And if you go back and study the work of any psychologist, be it like somebody who's super mechanical like Piaget, or someone who's a little bit more out there like Maslow or Rollo May, or someone who's extremely out there like Krishnamurti, when you listen to them talk, you know that they got there by puzzling themselves out. Some of the things that we talk about are certainly uh, observations that we make about the behaviors of others, but obviously we're also funneling that through our own worldview, and so all of that stuff is self-reflective, certainly.
Yes, I think yeah, but that is it's good to know, and that also kind of tells us, okay, this is where we're struggling with, and this is why we can help.
Yep.
But it's realizing that part of it. I think sometimes also that might be good, and it's good to stress it, because sometimes people, yeah, kind of stress on themselves or be negative. This is what I'm struggling with. Yeah, but because of that, this is why you're also good in helping people with that kind of thing. I think that's
Hmm.
that's also an
Hmm.
important part. We shouldn't just see the negative parts of the struggle, I would say. Let's move to that next question. What have you learned about remote working? And I think you work also, and I know you work on remote trainings and stuff
Yep.
like that. What's a tip for about remote work that you can share with us?
Well, so I think the first tip is about not quite remote work. So a lot of people right now are trying to deal with the curse of hybrid work. You got to come into the office 2 days a week. You got to come into the office 3 days a week. You got to come into office random, arbitrary amount of time. Um, that will destroy your work and destroy your team every time, unless your team has sat down, figured out the work that's on your plate as a whole, not your individual work, but on your plate as a whole, figured out all of the parts of that work that requires a meeting, conversation, collaboration. And when I say all of the work, Look for work that can benefit from it. We have a tendency to like force work onto individuals, especially now with remote working. And so what's happening is we're having more and more teams be like groups of 5 uninformed people. So when you're in the office together, or when you get together to work, make sure you have a goal. If you're in the office, make sure someone always has a whiteboard pen in their hand and is standing writing something. Use that time to parallel or to process together. Use that time to take those people, and you've got a gift. Use it. Okay. Then when you go back to work remotely, you have the parts of that you've figured out already. Everyone has clarity over what needs to happen, and you can just do the work. But right now what's happening, I guarantee it, is you're coming up with a bunch of goofball user stories and you're giving them to random people on the team. They're doing the work. They're not talking to each other, and you're ending up with more conflicts and bugs than you've ever had before.
Yeah, I think we this is, well, the thing with hybrid is that it's randomly, like you say, it's more like, okay, we want to use that office more, so let's take some time about how many people in the office at one point to some kind of calculated number, but it's not related to the work. And the thing is, some things are really good at, or at least over the last few years we realized some of the things work really well remote. That's fine, we can work on our own, and we might even collaborate or have conversations like we're having now remote. But some of the work is really good to do together, to collaborate and to use a whiteboard. And well, we have better tools than we had like 5 years ago, but they're still not at the same level that of just the whiteboard that both of us we have in our own home office, I would say.
The thing about people getting together in the same place, one of the things that makes it manageable, or that makes it magic, is the systematic reduction of distractions. So right now,
I'm thinking, I understand it, but let's more
so,
what you mean.
So right now I'm talking to you. I have a monitor behind me. I have 3 monitors in front of me. On the monitor up here is Slack. Every so often something pings up on Slack. When we teach classes online, we get the following benefits. More people tend to participate longer. Like if we do a value stream mapping exercise and then we're talking about it, multiple people will be up there moving stuff around on the value stream mapping exercise. That doesn't tend to happen when we're live, because people will go back to their seats and sit down. But when we are together, or when we're online, people tend to stare at each other, or the person singular that's talking. When we do a value stream mapping exercise as a group, everyone's talking the whole time. You end up with maybe 70 different conversations that happen simultaneously just between different groups of people who are doing the value stream mapping exercise. And that sounds like a large number, and it's not. And the reason that's important is because a team processes information and then a product comes out. And when the team is standing there and they're having all these different conversations, that's parallel processing of all those different informations, just different clusters of processors processing different things and then going up and changing things on the board. So somebody might be talking about this bottleneck. These people might be talking about this person. These people might be talking about this work product. And then they go up and they change the board, and in real time that happens live.
And people are, it's interesting, because what you're saying is they're collaborating at the same time they're not really collaborating, because 70 people, it's I don't know how. It's a little bit like bees and ants are collaborating. It's not how we think usually about collaborating in a real life, I would say.
Yeah. So collaboration is this. A bunch of people have a goal. Then they achieve it without killing each other. That's collaborating. And in the middle of that, you're going to have individual work, you're going to have pairing, you're going to have mobbing, you're going to have weird things you didn't see coming. You're going to have opportunities to teach each other. You're going to have new people come, you're going to have people on the team leave. All this stuff is going to happen, and that's all part of the collaborative framework of the project. But you know, and lean and agile tools can help us, you know, get that work done. But we have to recognize that that if there's like let's just say there's like a complexity curve where it's just in that one part of it is the complex domain, right? And that you go from slightly complex to a whole lot of complex. The more you move up that curve, the more people you need to collaborate on the solution. And we run into tiny bits of complexity all the time that individuals will solve, and then they won't tell anybody else. And because they didn't tell anybody else, the complexity itself actually never got solved. It just got covered up, because a solution is a repeatable process. So if you go into the next project and you run into that tiny thing again, it has to be resolved by a new individual actor. And it might even be you, even if you solved the first one, because you don't remember the solution. So
thanks for sharing that, because that's indeed something that is happening very, very common. I have a real life story that I can talk about. That I was at the client with a team, and somebody asked me a question about a certain problem. And so I came up with a solution. So this person asked me a question. I came up with the solution. And the next day, the very next day, I had the same problem. And I asked that person again, because and while I was asking the question, disturbing that person, I realized this is stupid. Why am I asking that person? Because I solved it for him yesterday, but I didn't write it down. He wrote it down. Oh, yeah, there was some kind of discussion, and he wrote that solution down. And of course, I was disturbing him, and so his flow of thought was gone. And okay, before I was finished with my sentence, I realized I know I can solve it myself. But yeah, of course, I'm already disturbing someone, and it's so easy to do, and yeah, it was kind of stupid to not even think, hey, I know it, and this is just the next day.
Yep.
Let alone if we do that, days or weeks or months apart. That.
So in the right environment exercise, we do a communications agreement where people say, here's the tools that we use. This is where we're going to put these different types of information. Here's how they get updated and so forth. And it's because almost everybody has Confluence or Teams, one of the other. No one uses them. No one at all. And it's because there is no system in place to let people know what to do when something is out of date. Therefore, everyone thinks everything is perpetually out of date. And
it's interesting. I just added a comment today on a Confluence, tagging a person who wrote a certain thing, just to say, okay, I think this is out of date. Can I just delete it, or can I just? I keep telling people, what I see in companies is that people move from Confluence to, let's say, I don't know, some other, whatever kind of thing, just because their system is not up to date and they have no system in place to keep it. And basically they kind of merge to another situation, but it's much easier to, okay, let's keep it. I think with
it's like my bed isn't made, I'm gonna go buy a new bed.
Something like that. Yeah, it's like that. It's like
sheets are dirty, time for a new bed.
Or let's move house because it's too dirty, and let's go somewhere else. It's no, we should find a system and put it up to date. And I sometimes tell the story about Wikipedia. There's a lot of people who are updating stuff, but the team itself at Wikipedia, the people that are hired, they're there to make sure to do some checks. Okay, is this really up? It's correct. This is whatever. Do we need to change the structure? Do we need to? They're not I would say not interested in the data itself, but more in the metadata and thinking
Yep.
about is it, what's
They're
and but
interested in the health of the wiki.
exactly, and that
Yep.
is in most companies nobody cares about the health of the wiki, or well, they do care, but they don't create a system to create.
No, what's worse is, oh God, this is so painful. But I've seen it multiple times over the course of COVID. The knowledge base becomes out of date, so they hire a knowledge base team that will then type all of the wiki pages. And it's like, do you understand what a wiki is?
Mhm.
Do you understand what collaboration is? Do you understand the power of the wiki? Is, you know, many hands make light work. It it's one of my top 10 pet peeves when someone shows it. And I always have to step back because I can't say like you are a redundant object, or you are waste. No one wants me to tell them that. But I do want them to oversee the wiki. But what I don't want them to do is physically write the pages. You know,
Mhm.
and that's what ends up happening.
But yeah, it's how would I say, it's like you say, they're not really waste. It's that there is a smarter way of doing it, and we need to find a way. And then the people, that doesn't mean that they're out of a job. It's
Yeah,
just that we can give them a
yeah.
more interesting job, and making
It
sure
would
that
be a more interesting job, but it is waste. If they're writing the pages, that is actually waste. If
oh yeah,
they're,
work
yeah,
or their team is waste in that
yeah,
sense. But it's we need to have a system to deal with these kind of things, I
yeah,
would say. And usually we don't have
yeah.
that
And there's usually even after you push the work out to where it's supposed to happen, there's still way more work than that team can handle, because then companies actually start to record what they're learning, and to a team, to a company, every time companies are completely shocked at how much they learn, because
right.
right now they're too busy forgetting everything that they've learned. Just billions of dollars of value flushed every day.
Yeah, I think that's interesting thing. And so that's it's interesting you say, because you said earlier on, it's not about remote work, but it is the essence of remote work, I would say, is having that documentation and knowing where is our knowledge stored, and how do we keep
Mm-hmm.
our knowledge stored. And it's interesting because a lot of people think that remote work has nothing to do with that, but no, it is the essential. If we know what's the kind of work we need to do, if we know where we can find information, collaboration is again much easier. And probably we need to collaborate on creating that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. Probably we do have to work on that kind of thing. So that's it is a very powerful tip, so thank you for sharing that. Let's
Let's do
move.
that.
Yeah, let's move to that book. What's a book that you have read, or a book
Okay.
that you want to talk about? You
So
already
I'll
kind
share it.
of alluded
I'll
to
share it
that.
really quickly. Heads up before you share. Blah blah blah. I understand. There it is. Okay. I am now sharing. I don't. There we
Now, yeah,
go. There we
there
go.
we go.
This is the book. This book is only 100 and some pages. I don't care if you don't read books. I don't care if you think you only read business books. But if you do only read business books, then you don't understand people. So this is a book by a woman named Becky Chambers, and it is a phenomenal, short, beautiful, touching, deep systems thinking book.
Hmm.
And it is about a monk and a robot. And the monk and the robot go off and do some things and learn some lessons. As you can see, won the Hugo Award. And it says here in the book, she gives us hope for the future. I think hope for the future is a good thing. Becky Chambers, A Psalm for the Wild Built. It is an unbelievably good short book about how human beings can screw things up, can fix things, can understand each other, and can grow sometimes in spite of themselves. That's my book.
Thanks for sharing, because it's yeah. Sometimes people ask me, can I only share business books, or and this is if I saw it correctly, it's science fiction and fantasy, but at the same time, what I'm hearing is that it gives us a worldview, or it talks about what could happen, and in a way, is that how
Yeah, it's called the genre now is called solar punk.
Mm.
So
And
it's
we're
like,
back to punk.
yeah, so it's kind of like steampunk, but on a different planet. Again, it's a short book. If you ever read The Tao of Pooh, which if you
Mm.
haven't, that's probably the second book you should buy. This book for me had the impact and the calm beauty of Tao of Pooh, but much shorter.
Okay, so that's already two books
Oops.
to talk about. Well, that's fine. It's this is one of the reasons why I like to do these conversations, because we learn about different kind of things, and you think, oh, I talk about one, and then almost immediately we link it to something else,
Mm-hmm.
what maybe more people have learned or know, and because of that, we learned some more. So yeah, that's I'll definitely link both books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to so
One
that
of
people.
the things is that as an author, so I read a lot of books. I read a tremendous amount of books. Thankfully, COVID has returned that part to me. I started reading at the beginning of COVID again, and I have not stopped for a second. And there are a lot of books that I read that I really enjoy and that I would recommend to other people. But there are very few authors where I am like in awe of their ability to craft
Mm,
an emotion, a setting, a situation that is so they're so the like so brief in the so sparing in the words that they use, and the words are so powerful. And she would be right there at the top of that list.
wow.
Yeah.
But I like that you stress that, because for me, and it doesn't matter if it's fiction or if it's business or it's all kind of books. For me, the author should do the work, so that the reader doesn't have to do the work. And I
Mm-hmm.
see many authors that that haven't spent the time working in it, and then me as a reader, I have to do a lot of the work to try to understand some
Yep.
parts. And yeah, and sometimes it's consultants that want to look very smart, and so they use very difficult words, but I'm like, well, you impress me more if you can write it in simple language, or at least that's easier to do, or not have 800 pages, what you can write in 50 pages or something like that. And this
Yeah.
is part of the writing, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and it's also the as a agilist, oftentimes we have to report up to VPs or whatever, and then we become frustrated because they're like, we did all of this work and you just want to see those three um, you just want to see those three slides.
Mm,
And it's because they really did want you to do the work. Sure, some of them are jerks, some of them are narcissists, some of them are egomaniacs, whatever. But by and large, they're overseeing like 25 different teams and trying to make sure that hundreds of people stay employed, just to like give people a break here. And so you could write an entire book about a couple going on a vacation trying to figure out if they wanted to stay married, or you could be Paul Simon And in two stanzas, you could entirely outline, the arc of a love affair, rainbows in the high desert air. We have the ability to make things concise in a way that people can get all of the detail.
Yeah, I've read or I saw how would you call an interview with a Belgian, no, a Dutch singer song, no, singer, how would I, singer, but
Mm-hmm.
at some point he wrote a little book, and then a little bit later he wrote a song, and he said in the interview like, okay, this song was actually what I should have written instead of the book, because I'm so much better in explaining it in 3 minutes than actually in the book, where I tried to become an author, and this was his first book, and he says okay, I tried it and I believe in it, and later on he wrote much better books, but that first book he didn't understand yet the craft of writing a book, where he, after
Mm-hmm.
20 years of writing songs, was much better. And I so love that interview when he really says it's like, yeah, okay, the 3 minute version is so much better than the 300-page version, because I still was learning how to write books and how to do things, and writing the song is, yeah. When you were talking about Paul Simon and the love affairs, like, okay, yeah, it's song about all your ways to leave your lover, is like, okay, this is, we can all relate and all think about some of the things that says so much more than some of the other books, and
Yep.
other people are writing a good movie about it, and that might be inspiring, but everybody has to find their own craft and where we're good at, and spend that time.
So
And
my next book, I'm going to try and make a graphic novel for this very
wow.
reason. So I've actually written the whole book out, and then I'm trying to turn each chapter into like 5 pages of just graphic novel. And I'm shocked and amazed to find out how well that actually works. So the first 3 chapters are done, and I'm not saying when the completion date is because I have no idea, but I was blown away by the product of boiling down the ideas to their essence, and then also making those ideas exchange largely through dialogue and not
Hmm.
through sitting there and painstakingly academically describing something. It's also
Yeah.
why in the collaboration equation, almost everything is taught through a story of something that actually happened rather than pontificating.
Yeah, there is so much power in storytelling, and well, it I've read also bad business novels,
Yeah,
but
so we're
people
not going to
take the
talk
time.
Lencioni today.
But if people take the time to digest and write good business novels, then
Yep.
at the point it can really be powerful, because yeah, it explains some of the things, but it's a craft, and you need to work on it, and it's
Hmm.
not something we that is very easy to do. Let's move to that next question. What is a question that I didn't ask you, or what is a question that you think I should ask you?
Mm. Um, Me personally, and not future people, probably, which is also the subject of many, many songs, which is why do we trap ourselves in our own desires? So
Mm.
why do we make detailed plans and then kill ourselves trying to stick to the detailed plan when it's obvious, or maybe even just hinted, that there could be an easier way to build this as we learn more as we do the project? And what the answer to that might be is that at the beginning of any human endeavor, there is the word. to go biblical on you, and we are the gods that set out that word. We come up with a set of expectations for how things will go, and we want to be right.
Mm,
And when we involve other people, we make tacit or explicit promises to them that certain milestones will be met, certain monetary amounts will be adhered to, certain numbers of people will be doing certain numbers of things at certain times, that certain people who are expecting it will receive something by that point in time. And what we never do at the beginning is say, what's our goal? And as we draw out this roadmap, what which ones of these milestones do we think are a sure thing? Which kind of concern us? Which worry us? Which scare the hell out of us? And we've all
mm,
started projects where we know we're not going to be able to meet certain milestones, and then we still freak out about it. And this is a human condition. This isn't just because of boards of directors or because of funding sources. It's because this is how we work with everything. I really wanted to get to the lake by 3 p.m. I made it at
mm.
4:15 and now I'm upset, but I'm alive. I didn't like drive around the traffic and through the construction zone trying to get here faster. That there was a change happens, and that we anticipate it and we deal with it like normal human beings. So at the beginning of every project, this is like Daniel Kahneman's system 1 and system 2 thinking. We have to make sure that we're not building a system 1 system, that like
Mm.
our plan isn't just our whims put on a piece of paper with a really nice plausible story wrapped around it, but it's like we recognize that over the course of this or any other thing that we do, weird things are going to happen. Maybe it snows and everybody loses power for 3 days. The things that go wrong aren't our fault, and they're inevitable, because that's what life does, because we can help sometimes and other times we can't. How do
Yeah,
you like that? I like drew a bow on that. I brought everything all together.
yeah, but I like that you stress it out because indeed, well, some things are the so-called black swans that we can't predict or that we know that, well, for example, a pandemic or everything, yeah, it could
Mm-hmm.
have been predicted that it will happen at some point, but we couldn't have predicted that it would happen in 2020.
Yep.
Uh, so that might be a thing, but there's a lot of other things that when we create plans that we kind of know, okay, we're at risk, and yeah, for me, agile and especially the fact that we work in small iterations should give us the opportunity to rethink and from time to time think, are we still going in the right direction? Yeah, we should have some data to know what is working. And again, not everything is quantifiable, not everything is good, but we should take from time to time to think a little bit. And like you say, in the beginning, let's talk, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what is that risk if I want to go to Seattle or if I want to go somewhere else? What's that time? It makes me think when my children were trying to play football in the house, and it's like, no, well, the ball is, it's not risky, it's blah blah blah. Yeah, there may be a small chance, but if you hit the window, the risk is actually it's a large
Yep.
problem. So maybe I don't want you to do that inside, even if that chance is very slim. If you do it, then there is still the problem is very risky. So we always need to think about the two equations, like, okay, what's the
Mm-hmm.
chance it's going to happen? And if it's happened, are people dying? Maybe then we want to limit that risk a little more than if it's just a small thing. I think we need to think a lot more about these things in our goals. So thanks for bringing that up because, yeah,
Yep.
while you were saying it, I was thinking about some of the things I'm going to promise in the next couple of days. It's like, did I think enough about that? For sure not. So let's review tomorrow about some of the risks that about what we're promising. So thanks for bringing that up.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'm at that very last question about who do you think I should ask next?
Tony Ann. Tony
And
Ann Di Maria. That one there, yes.
of course, this
Sitting at a desk.
uh, because you've yeah. Well, I'll let you explain. Why should I invite her?
Well, so Tony Ann has been spending the last several years deeply immersed in the psychology of work and then the practical applications of that. So, understanding how people tend to respond to things, and then we often build systems that make things worse. And she's got a lot of great tips on how to make things better. The other thing is that she's reached a point where I would say that I'm not saying this well, but she's ridiculously concise now about being able to state something, tell why it happens, and then tell a fix for it, which has been pretty cool to watch. And then the last thing is that I think out of all of the people in Agile, she is the most underexposed. She is a gem, and we need to treat her as such.
Thanks for promoting her, I would say, and bringing her up. I think you've been a big supporter of her over the last couple of years, but
Where would we partner?
yeah, but there is also a reason why you partner up and why
Oh
you say
yeah,
you want to work with. You've
yeah.
worked with other people and you partnered up in the past with other people, but this is a partnership that's been going on for
A
a long
very long
time, I
time.
would say. And so that also says something about how you value her. I would say.
Very much.
So thank you for taking that time. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way to connect with you?
The easiest way to connect with me is to just chat me up on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
But the best way to connect with me probably is to go to Modus Institute, MODUS Institute.com. And there's a real time chat there. So you can chat with Tony Ann or Dave or Thushanthan or me. That they can, if I'm sitting here and somebody else grabs that call or that text chat, they can either say Jim is indisposed or come get me immediately. So I'm super reachable right about now because, like you, I'm trying my best to travel less.
Indeed, indeed. I think, well, a lot of us, well, it's interesting that I started this whole project after COVID or when the world was opening up again, but it's definitely has been influenced a lot. But it's like, okay, let's do a lot more things from home and try to connect in different kind of ways with the rest of the world. I also wanted to add when I originally asked what's a good way to connect with you, that I loved your original answer. I don't know if you remember what you answered
My,
there.
my original answer was big hug.
Exactly. So that's yeah, that's a good way to connect. Of course, that's kind of harder to do that remotely,
It's
but
very hard to do that remotely.
it shows a lot about how you think about the world and how you connect with people, I would add.
I at the LEI summit this year, it it that was my first major conference post COVID conference, and it felt so good to just eat dinner with people. And when I was in England, I got together a couple of times in Brighton, um, with Carl Scotland, and
Mm,
um, and and his wife. And continuity is really important to people. And I'm finding that I love being home. I love my grill. I love cooking at home. but my God, sitting and just being with people that you have known for years and haven't seen for years, there was just no replacement for that. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I recognize that the very first conference I was going to, that for me it was a local one, but well, it was interesting for two kind of reasons. Like you say, connecting, really connecting with people, hugging, and at the same time also, I would say, how would I say it, a lot more. Um, Respect for, okay, do you want to hug or not want to hug, because we
Yep.
I think, just for myself, I didn't think enough about it. I kind of knew a little bit, okay, this, not everybody is huggy, but with COVID it was a lot more like, okay, do you feel safe, how do you feel it?
Yep. Yep.
And it felt more like, okay, we really think much deeper at that kind of level, and when we do with the people that we really want to connect, um it's the hugging, it's the talking, it's everything. You, well, we know that when we connect, we talk for a long time. I remember the first time that we trained, that we did a workshop together. Basically, our way of preparing was first online, but after that, the night before, we just chatted in the restaurant for hours, and that felt the right preparation, I would say, because we felt so connected that during the
Hmm.
training we could. I felt like at ease at any time to say, "Wait a minute, Jim, let's move on to the next part," and the same for you. I think that is also how, at least for me, it worked really well. We felt really connected, and I
Hmm.
think that is a big important part of our work and our, yeah, of the way we think in life, I would say.
I think that the biggest thing there was that both of, just like that other dichotomy, is that we both thought that the things we were teaching were extremely important, but
Hmm.
that but we weren't really, but we didn't take it too seriously.
Mm.
So if you went in a certain direction, I could come along. If I took us in a certain direction, you could come along. And we had faith that by the end of the class, we would have taught people good things in a good way. And sure enough, we did. And
Hmm.
I'm those are the best experiences. The dance.
Yeah, exactly. It's the dance. It's knowing, well, having the trust to go along with the dance, because it's always with two, and with the class in that sense, because in it was not just the dance for the two of us, but it was for the people who were in that room. I would I would like to thank you, because it's been again a wonderful time connecting with you. It's like probably everybody noticed, we went in all kinds of directions, like we usually do,
Hmm.
but I still feel, yeah, it's very connected. We moved in all kind of interesting things, talking about, for me, a lot of the essence of agile, and how, yeah, how we think, and hopefully, at least for some of the people who are watching, we also show a little bit and give a little bit of hope for the world, because it started out, I would say, in a very dark way, but I think we moved past that in a more, yeah, or kind of way of helping people, I think. So,
Yeah.
which is also nice.
Yeah. I mean, I've been through, you know, Reagan and AIDS and
Mm.
I've been through a few dark global times, and there's, beauty and sorrow again, and so, we'll find our way out of this, but this is a tough time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But we moved, and we found some lightness, some part of it, and let's hope we can, that could help all of us to find and work on that better world in that sense. So that's, definitely, and I do hope that for you and your partner, that you can, yeah, figure out what works best for both of you,
Yep.
uh, in whatever way that is,
I
because,
appreciate that.
that's, it's never easy, these kind of decisions, and like you say, the older we get, it sometimes, yeah, it becomes harder. take some of these things. So let's see what how it works. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.